Concerning Dasein and the technology of historical thinking, um, one could think anything under a different way of being, so that we're speaking neither of the measurability of the thing in question, nor of teleological announcement as by perhaps phronesis in the way Heidegger understands it. It has a command out of the past, which a concept which one could extend to cover the whole phylogenetic unconscious of Jung, and especially in the way somebody like Jordan Peterson understands it as the wisdom of the thing that is older than ourselves, the whole history of our species, as it were. History in the sense Heidegger mostly deals with is vastly smaller than that, but it's richer in the sense that it involves the concept of the holy and time as coordinated around something like, say, I think Heidegger himself gives the example of Mohammed, and I guess one could also say the center of the world centered by Mecca, as just as it could be centered by Lhasa, or the central place of any other, Athens, Jerusalem, whatever. Instead, the difference in being, one possible large example, which is interesting, is the whole Japanese people understood as not undergoing the same transformations in the same. Well, of course, no large groups underwent the same transformations in just the same way, but this idea of people that are basically a shamanistic kind of Stone Age people, and then suddenly they see themselves twice through the mirror of Americans breaking into the economic zone of Japan in the 19th century under Commodore Perry, and then again in World War II, this sudden falling of the state that interpreted in the Western way that there was a monoculture that only has barbarians or enemies on the outside, and then suddenly realizing itself as one of the many cultures. I think of, for instance, of this Japanese so-called factory love, the idea of going to look at dirty smokestacks, oil refineries, and so on. This reminds of, if you look at the Atlia Mountains, which is probably the most landlocked place on Earth, it's very extraordinary, the landscapes, and the photographs, the surviving old photographs of the people there are extraordinary. One can see how people would have adjusted to the being of a particular kind of beauty. Mishima said the Japanese have in their spirit brutality and beauty. That's their main thing, just as one could say, I guess Alan McFarland, the anthropologist, says just as the Japanese have a finer sense of beauty than any other culture, you could say the French, with their sense of cuisine, is finer, depending on how, of course, in the modern period, one could point to many abuses of the reputation of French cuisine for being better, and sometimes one says, go to the countryside and see what the real stuff is like, instead of judging by Michelin-rated restaurants or whatnot. In any case, one would have to assume there's a different look on the things, and that different look could correspond not to something that could be measured, not to something derivable out of of a discussion of the logos, which would then look something like a teleology or first principle, but rather just in the way it's being, this idea that because it would certainly be very weird for Americans to. Um, it just doesn't seem natural to the idea of the factory love, or even though one sees many nice people walking about admiring flowers here and there in English speaking countries, and of course the English are famous for being gardeners and their garden love of their gardens, and so forth. It doesn't have the same tenor of this absorption in the beauty in the same way that seems very effortless with the Japanese, and also which seems peculiar when you see it in the movies of Ozu, you know, because of course, because Kurosawa was probably rightly accused of being somewhat westernized, but perhaps in a way that runs deep because um, there's a lot of westernization in Japan since the time of the break-in of Admiral, Commodore period, um, including in some of the most famous engravings and so on, and the painting about the wave and all that. Um, this transformation of the looks of things still wouldn't get us to being, though, right? Because there's an agent, which is we're thinking of in contradistinction to the look of the thing, and that agent has an outlook. And even if it weren't about the outlook, it's just that the different looks are had by different beings. Maybe we could erase that and think it sort of. We could try to enter into that circle, as it were, but it's almost as though, yeah, I don't think that would properly get one there. Um, so let's think about that as one more approach going forward.